Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Museum of the City of New York. If you're just coming in, please find a seat, and if you can't find one, one of our lovely ushers will help you. My name's Fran Rosenfeld, and I'm the Director of Public Programs at the museum, and it was also my privilege to curate the exhibition, which is inspiring tonight's program, New York on Ice, Skating in the City. And tonight we are thrilled to present a program called What's Next for Ice Skating in New York, and we're going to explore the city's skating past and present and potential future, most of all. And joining us are a group of panelists covering all facets of skating in the city. From left to right, we have Sharon Cohen, the founder and CEO of Figure Skating in Harlem. Left, I'm sorry. From behind, I was like there. From far left, from second to left, then next to Sharon on the left is Elise Preston, the skating director at Wollman, Rink. And then to Sharon's right, we have Stephan Butler, founding partner of the Kingsbridge National Ice Center project in the Bronx. And then we have Miye who is the star forward for the National Women's Hockey League's Metropolitan Riveters. Next to Miye, we have Florence Ngala, who is an esteemed alumna of the Figure Skating in Harlem program. And last but not least, of course, we have our wonderful moderator, Budd Mishkin, reporter and former host of One-on-One with Budd Mishkin on New York One. So just would like to take a moment to extend a heartfelt thanks to the promotional partners on tonight's event, including the Skating Club of New York, Brooklyn Blades, Aviator Sports Center, and the City Ice Pavilion. We truly appreciate their support, and I should say that the exhibition New York on Ice, Skating in the City as a whole, was made possible by generous members of the Skating Club of New York, some of whom I hope are in the audience with us tonight, and I just want to thank them for making the entire thing possible. After tonight's conversation, we want to invite you, if you haven't had a chance to see the exhibition yet, to go upstairs to the second floor, and we're going to keep the gallery open till 8:30, and you can come and check it out if you haven't already. New York on Ice, the exhibition, explores how ice skating evolved in the city from its colonial roots to become a 19th century craze, and later an opportunity for elaborate spectacle, commercialized leisure, and competitive sport in the 20th century and beyond. We have another program coming up in February, on Friday, February 23rd at 7 p.m., we have the next New York on Ice event. It is called New York's Golden Ice Age, and it is an evening celebrating New York City's golden age of ice skating in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, with some amazing talent being featured. First, we have a conversation with two-time figure skating world medalist Sonia Klopfer-Dunfield, who will be joined by hockey maven and hockey expert Stan Fischler and his pal rink rat Jimmy Sullivan. And they are going to reflect on their journeys from the Brooklyn Ice Palace, where they both began, to Madison Square Garden and rinks beyond. And then afterwards, we have the Ice Theater of New York is going to present a demonstration of virtuosic skating on their synthetic ice rink right inside the museum on the second floor, right next to the exhibition, and they will be in costume and to music, and that should be an extraordinary evening. We'll have seasonal cocktails and bites to follow, and it will all be very atmospheric. So please check out mcny.org/skating for more. And at this time, I'd like to ask you to turn off anything that makes noise. Feel free to tweet using the hashtag MCNYLive. And now I would like to welcome our moderator, Budd Mishkin, who will introduce the panelists and the program, and you will find fuller bios of all the panelists in your print programs. So take it away, Budd.
All right, thank you, Fran. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Audio's okay? You can hear me in the back? Excellent. I'll try and make it worthwhile. Thank you all for being here. I gave the museum in my bio information, I gave them the phrase 4-time Stanley Cup champion, but somehow they didn't go for that somehow. So I always like to bring props. So we have here a hockey stick from 1969 that I could say I played hockey with this stick, but it all depends on what your terminology is. I skated up and down the rink, and occasionally I touched the puck, and one time was credited with an assist in 1970. And that's pretty much the highlight of my life. And that's no disrespect to my wife or daughter, but it speaks to the love of skating and the love of sports connected to skating. And that's why this esteemed panel is here tonight, and that's why they're all involved in skating programs in some form or another, and it be the sport figure skating, be the sport hockey, be it just for the skating of the joy of it. Still, as a 58-year-old, when I get out on the ice and either play or I'm just skating, there's just no other feeling like it. And to someone who doesn't skate, it's really hard to describe. Thank you all for being here tonight. We're just going to do some snippets to start out with. Talk a little bit about the initial love of skating and your connection to it now. Sharon, we'll start with you, the founder and CEO of figure skating in Harlem. What was the initial love? And, by the by, we have some visual representation of some of the things we're going to talk about. How did the initial love of skating come about?
That last part is a surprise, but actually it's wonderful to be here. And I fell in love with the glide. The first time I touched the ice, I was 7.5 years old in, of all places, Florida. It was raining that day at our hotel, and I was bored, and my father said, here's a rink, and there's some ice cubes all pushed together, and you walk on it. So as soon as I did, I really, really fell in love with it. It turns out in my hometown of Wilmington, Delaware, was really a mecca for figure skating in the 1970s and 80s. And I began taking lessons and did the whole 9 yards before school, after school practices, competing. And it was just a joy. And I always found it challenging, and I always loved seeing those great champions who were, many rungs up the ladder from me. And I was just in awe when I saw figure skating in person. So
the creation of any kind of program doesn't happen overnight. Excuse me. But can you tell us the story of the creation of the program that you started, and where the spark comes from, and when was that first moment when you really kind of recognized this is going to happen?
Sure. So by the time I was 16, I was assured of one thing: I was not going to be the next Olympic gold medalist. So at that stage, I left my competitive life in skating, and I devoted myself to my studies. I went on to college, and after college, I got my first job here in New York City in 1989 at CBS News. And while I was working, there's no internet back then. Take yourselves back. But there were television sets going, and there was an ice hockey program in Harlem that was already in existence. And I saw this story, and I picked up the phone because I was just so moved by the fact that, in my experience, figure skating and hockey, there were a few girls of color. It was an expensive sport, and I thought they were doing something amazing. So I just called to say, great job. And on the other end of the phone, Budd and I were talking earlier, is a gentleman named Gene Kitt at the Upward Fund, who always was years ahead of himself. He grabbed me by the ear and said, we have some girls that want to figure skate and not play hockey. So I began teaching from 1990 to 1997 in East Harlem, young in my 20s, and I saw girls develop that same joy that I had as a kid. And it was just as joyful for me to help them and to see them grow and succeed as it was to do it myself. And so in 1997, the Upward Fund, where this began, was closing, and we decided we could make this something more. And at that time, we really knew that education was the heart, and skating was really what brought them in, the discipline and the learning to focus, all those wonderful qualities. They needed an educational background as the backbone first. So that was 1997. We established figure skating in Harlem, and we haven't missed a season since, and it's 21 years later.
That's tremendous. Florence, you were one of those students who was like, wow. What was the initial spark? How did you first find out about it? And was it love at first sight, or was there any moment of, is this really gonna, am I gonna do this?
So I joined figure skating in Harlem in 2002.
There you go.
And so I was 6 years old. Miss Sharon, I've literally known Miss Sharon for it's been 20 years, almost 20 years, which is crazy, but I was very small, and I was in another after-school program. I was one of those kids. I wasn't bad, I just talked a lot, so I said a lot of things I shouldn't have. So sometimes parents have to come in and yank you out of places that you maybe shouldn't be and put you in places in programs like FSH. I still needed some molding and some building, but definitely fell in love with the sport right away. To piggyback off of what Ms. Sharon said, the glide was something that I never heard it put that way, but it was such a feeling and such a release. I became very passionate super soon, so I remember being young and being the smallest person in groups where people were older than me, because I was just I need to learn more, I need to do more. I would spend afternoons Googling how to land an axle, how to do your flip jump quicker, why does my backbone hurt when I fall, things like that. So yeah, aside from skating, definitely the program instilled a lot of confidence in me. We would have ice shows every year, and on top of that, we have other events like skating parties. This year, it's on Saturday, I think, and I'll be there as an alum now. But we'd winter skating parties. We would meet people. So I remember just being exposed to a lot of stuff at a very young age, which developed my confidence. And when I would go back and perform at ice shows, I would just became such it became so easy. That's actually, I used to go to Bryant Park all the time. I used to be obsessed. This is a little girl who, her mom thought I was some professional skater. She actually started to pay me to give her lessons. And I was 14. I was sure, I'll do it. So she gave me $20 to teach her daughter. But I put this in here because Bryant Park looks very different in 2010 than now. They build things every year. I walk by and I'm like, Jesus, how much money do they have? You're nodding your head you know what I'm talking about, right? So yeah, this is in 2010, but this is just a testament to the growth and the expansion. This is a rink that definitely gave me a lot of experience because it was free. So I literally just would get on the train, or my parents would drive me down, and I would skate all the time. So yeah.
That's tremendous. That's just great. Well, thank you for being here. Stephen Cohen, as we mentioned, is part of the project at Kingsbridge National Ice Center up in the Bronx, and I think it's safe to say, for those of us who love to skate, love hockey, the notion of when we first started reading about it, it's you mean 9 rinks? Any rink, anywhere, is a great thing, especially in a place where there aren't rinks. I mean, the whole idea of opportunities, no matter what they're for, be it in sports, be it in arts, be it in music, is great. I remember the first time reading about this, I was wow, that's really something. So let's start first with your initial connection to it, and then we'll get to where the project is right now.
Sure. My initial connection started with a gentleman named Kevin Parker, and actually one of my other partners right now, John Nolan, who's in the crowd. While I was at Deutsche Bank, Kevin approached me and asked me to take a look at this industry, this sport that his sons played in, and they were playing for a team called North Park in New York City, playing ice hockey, and they were playing at rinks throughout the area. And he noticed that every weekend he had to drive outside of the city to attend a hockey tournament, but never in New York City. So he asked me to take a look at this what's the problem? Why is there no hockey games and hockey tournaments here in New York City? And it quickly became apparent that the issue was a lack of ice surfaces for the population of New York.
By the way, excuse me for 1 second. Are the people that we're looking at now in these pictures, they are connected to you?
Sure are, sure. Yeah, so that's actually my son. Who's I think in that picture, that's last year. What I wanted to share is, so I know Sharon got the question about skating. I grew up in North Jersey, like other people in the crowd here, and only got to skate when it got cold enough.
Right.
And I'm a kid of the 70s, and sometimes it was cold enough for a couple weeks of skating, and some years there wasn't. So I have a little bit of a, sort of unmet desire to skate. I'd gotten proficient at it on those week-long winter breaks and stuff. And when I was asked to look at this problem, I was reminded that I actually liked that sport and wanted to get back into it. So I got back on my skates and brought my son and started doing a learn to skate program, or it was Mommy and Me skating program, but my wife doesn't skate at all, so I went with my son. So what I show up there really is, me living through my son. And I think there is one picture of me with him up there where I'm barely standing on my skates. Yeah, right there. So, it's just me living my life through him at that point. I think in that picture he's 3, and that's Lasker Rink before.
So let's. Kingsbridge has given us a video to play, which is a little bit about the project. So let's watch it for a second. It's about a minute and a half.
Where else other than New York City would you want the best and the biggest of anything? And the Armory will provide us with the world's largest indoor ice facility.
All right, Stephen, I have one thing to say. Curling?
Yeah, you better believe it. We actually think it's going to be one of the more successful programs in there.
I get that. I asked that as a wise guy New Yorker. If I was up in Canada, they'd look at me like, yeah, of course, curling. Yeah. So we read from time to time stories in the paper. When I was at New York One, obviously, New York One did stories on it about what's happening with the project, what's not happening. Bring us up to date. Where is it right now?
Sure. We have incredible support from both the city and the state. The governor has provided to us permanent financing for the project, and we're presently just completing the rest of the capital stack, essentially raising the rest of the funds beyond what the governor is providing. Very significant 9-figure loan from the state of New York, and expect to, within the next 3 months, be back at the drawing board, finishing the designs and getting underway with construction. Might be a teaser. I refreshed the construction permits recently. So, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It looks like we're going to be getting going pretty soon.
And there's another video that you guys have provided that shows it has the simulation of it's right by the subway station.
Yes, actually, one of the best parts of this project, though it was accidentally, it happened, transit-oriented development. The 4-line, the green line, that runs essentially from Coney Island.
Forever.
Yeah, it runs both ends. It stops at the Kingsbridge Armory. The Armory was built first, then the elevated line was brought to the Armory so that people could get to it. So we have incredible ability to get people into the facility and out of the facility for not only the events, but for all the programming, and kids with their coaches. So you easily jump on the train, grab your bag, and go. So it should be very convenient, very easy to get to for most people.
That's great. One other personal note about this. When I was doing sports reporting, you learn early on, no cheering in the press box. That no matter what team you rooted for when you're growing up, when you're covering a game or covering a team, there's no cheering. It's not like you're 10 years old, and if the team wins, you're not jumping up and down. You shouldn't be. Sometimes it happens, and you shouldn't be. And it's not hard to learn because it becomes a job. Not that you want to be so jaded about it. But I'll say this, you do become an observer of people, as I guess you should be in any line of work and certainly in any line of reporting. And in covering Mark Messier, who was obviously involved in this project, there was definitely an aura about him, and not one that he was trying to put out there to show what a tough guy he was or what he is this or that. He didn't need to show what a tough guy he was. That there was a sense of a team leader, and not just that. As a New Yorker, you're really respected. A lot of athletes come here, and they play here, and it's great, and they all say wonderful things about the city. Maybe they never even, do they have a real connection to the city or not? They say all the things that they think they're supposed to say, and that's fine. But a select few really get it, and really come here and not just try to excel, obviously on the ice or on the court or on the baseball diamond or on the gridiron, but really get that the city is a huge city, but it's made up of small neighborhoods. And that if you just give a little of yourself, we are going to love you. And he really got it that when he got traded here, that he started contributing in ways, and trust me, it wasn't in ways where he was calling the media to say, hey, I'm going to be visiting this hospital today. Often it was quite, quiet and just doing it. And the notion that he is involved in this project and trying to bring something that did not exist previously is not surprising at all. I'm just trying to say is that I admire him. I certainly admired him as a player, but also in his contribution to New York. Let's move on. Miye Dench from the Metropolitan Riveters is playing hurt tonight. You didn't see and it's not just a prop. I mean, this is a prop. She's come in with the crutches as a player. Went to Harvard, played at Harvard, work in the DA's office?
Yes.
Yeah, that usual combination of working in the DA's office, hockey, so on. Let me get back to my AV duties here. What is the earliest you remember of a connection to skating, and this is something that I want to do?
Well, the earliest connection was when I was about 6 months old. The Rangers won the Stanley Cup. And I don't remember it, but my brother was 5. And so he watched it on TV and said, oh, I want to do that. And so from then on, I was watching his games. I was in an ice rink, and as soon as I could waddle, pretty much he gave me a mini hockey stick and told me to stand in front of a door. And,
Wait, this is where you're growing up?
In Manhattan. So in our apartment in Manhattan, we played hallway hockey, and it was ruthless.
Yeah? Elbows were high at certain...
They didn't even need to be. I was about 3 feet shorter than him.
Yeah. A little cross-check across the...
Yeah.
And so where did it go from there?
So, my parents tried to peer pressure me into figure skating. No offense, but I wasn't, I wanted to be like him. So I insisted on hockey, and grew up playing for the Cyclones at Chelsea Piers, which was wonderful. And then eventually I switched over to girls, and hopefully this won't be the case for long, but there wasn't a girls program in New York. So my incredible parents drove me to Connecticut 4 times a week.
4 times a week?
More, yeah. And eventually I was lucky enough to play in college, and then lucky enough to get drafted to our brand new, shiny new league.
So tell us about the league, for those of us...
Yeah, so it's the very first women's professional hockey league. It was inaugurated 3 years ago. There's 4 teams: New York / Metropolitan, Buffalo, Connecticut, and Boston. And we play for the Isabel Cup, who's Lord Stanley's daughter, actually. And our team logo, in my humble opinion, is the best sports logo. We have Rosie the Riveter as our mascot. And so it's been a blast. It's been just an amazing experience.
Yeah, that Montreal Canadiens logo, that ain't nothing compared to the Rosie the Riveter logo. That's terrific. Elise, Wollman Rink is obviously a part of, it's just a part of New York that we all not take for granted, but it's just one of those, you look out on Central Park and it's one of those beautiful things to see. as we were chatting beforehand, when you arrived there, perhaps you didn't expect to be there as long as you've been there. But what was early on, is there a love of skating that you can draw on?
I actually remember the first time I walked into a rink. My family had moved from the Midwest to Arizona, to a small town in northern Arizona called Flagstaff, which at the time was considerably smaller than it is now. And my brother and I were not thrilled about moving to this small little town, which is actually a mountain town. And you have two choices in Flagstaff, which is either skating or skiing or watching the snowfall. So I remember the day my mom walked me into the rink, and I had never seen skating, and I was just blown away, and I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And the rink that we had in Flagstaff at the time was closed on 3 sides and open on 1 side. So part of the joy of skating there was the snow blowing in the one open side of the rink, which I guess is my connection now to Wollman Rink, that outdoor skating started in New York City. Skating started as an outdoor activity and an outdoor sport, and sort of keeping that tradition alive in the park has been sort of a thrill for me. And it was going to be sort of this 2-year plan while I figured out what I wanted to do in the city, and then it kind of stuck. So.
And you've now been there for
23 years.
Yeah. And there was telling me a cute story beforehand, which I will not steal from you, but there's an article early on in your tenure there that said that you were the only female Zamboni driver in New York City. When you talk about things to put on a resume, or we used to call it in the news business, when you see a person on TV during the newscast and you see their name, and then underneath there it's called a drop line. So it could be, whatever, hockey player, or former Knick, or whatever. So that would be like an excellent drop line. Now that was true then. Do we have any confirmation on whether that's still the case?
I don't know, but I do my annual 1 drive a year. So when somebody shows up late, or I go out there with my lipstick just for show, and I pretend like I'm putting my lipstick on while I drive, and I beep a couple times, and they're like, "Oh, woman driver."
So we're talking tonight about what the future holds. So let's start off with you, Elise. What does Wollman provide right now? And again, we think of it as just a part of New York City. What are you looking towards? Is it what it is, or is there stuff that you think Wollman could do going forward, or you're looking to do going forward?
Well, I think the way that you keep a job interesting when you've stayed 21 years beyond your planned date is to sort of think outside the box and really think about how you can bring new people to a place and broaden sort of the reach of the programming, and there's some thinking outside the box.
For the record, that is not me in the middle there.
So it was just sort of, we sort of try different programs each year, and this year we came up with, I worked very closely with a coach who happens to be here in the audience on a class called Frozen Yoga. I thought it was cute and kind of catchy, and there's a little zen in there, which came, and it's like frozen yogurt. So
yes. We've
started that this year. And one thing I've learned over time is that it really takes time to nurture a program and to bring people in. So we're trying to grow. This is our covert plan to encourage more boys to figure skate. It's called Jumping Jacks, and so it's really, I think it's just really thinking outside the box and trying to do different things, and not just run the same type of program year in and out. We've also probably the largest thing that we're known for is that we've at Wollman turned our figure skating program really into a group activity, whereas at almost every rink it's a solo sport where people go out and they train and they're alone with a private coach, and it's a very individual sport. And we have over 150 kids who come and take group skating, figure skating up through the highest levels as a group class. And we'll have kids who are sort of just entry-level figure skaters, but competent skaters on the ice at the same time in a class with kids who are working on their highest tests. And that's sort of the direction that I see skating going, that there's a lot more opportunities in group skating, ensemble skating, theater on ice, synchronized skating. So training as a group is really sort of a pathway to that.
Miye and Florence, you caught the bug early on, and now as young women, still connected to skating, still skating. What do you see from younger women and girls now in New York in terms of skating? And is the reaction or the introduction to it different than it was when you were growing up, or is that not changed quite so much?
So I think the really cool thing to watch is how quickly, I can't speak to figure skating, but just how quickly girls hockey has grown over the last even just 10 years. And that, hockey, I think, increasingly is not seen as a boys' sport anymore. And that's very inspiring to see. It's very cool to see like little girls and little boys wearing our jerseys at games and stuff like that. And so I think part of the culture has shifted and it continues to shift. And so that's one of the most rewarding things to see for me.
And Florence, what do you see as far as figure skating and specifically the program in Harlem? And is it different from when you were starting out?
Yeah, so I started, it's like 16 years ago. It's been like a while. So I definitely know that like coming back to Harlem, so I just finished up school. So I was away in Albany in school and I came back and now I'm more and more involved with my program. But I know that for sure there's so many more girls that are involved with figure skating in Harlem than there were when I was younger. So I think that's just a testament to people like parents and then also like younger kids wanting to be more involved in sports that aren't just like basketball or soccer, no offense to basketball or soccer, but trying to do things that are a little different. And I know now, years later, even when I say I used to be a figure skater, it's like, whoa, like it's a huge thing. I think one, because like it's a rare sport, and obviously you don't see many people of color who are skaters, so I think that's something I'm very proud of. Figure skating in Harlem definitely does a lot of outreach, and you see that in the numbers, like every year it goes up and up and up, so I think that's an amazing thing. And then also like, I know a lot of girls who I'm still friends with and still know from the program, they don't just want to skate uptown, they want to go to Chelsea Piers, they want to go to Bryant Park. Like I was like, Mom, I need to go downtown, I need to do more. So I think that it's passion will drive you to do anything, and it will drive your parents crazy, but if it works, it works.
Need to do more in terms of
like ice time, and like I definitely I got up to a couple doubles, but I know it's because like I was driven by the coaching I got at the program, but then I also just wanted to push myself, and that like inner drive that I think a lot of us have, just people who fall in love with the sport. So needing to do more in terms of like needing to be on the ice more, needing to like learn more, needing to know like the physics of the sport to become better.
And that involved going downtown.
Yeah, to get more ice time.
Got it.
Yeah, to get free ice time.
That's really ironic, because a little bit of New York history or New York sports history. It's in the world of basketball. You could, and going back a ways, you could be great at Madison Square Garden, and the Knicks way back when were and won championships. Trust me, it happened in my lifetime. But often those players were kind of cajoled into coming uptown to the famed Rucker Court in Harlem to show, all right, let's see what you have up
I
here.
think that's like specifically Rucker Park.
I understand
as a
that.
Harlem
I got
native, just
that.
saying.
But I understand that. But I always,
But yeah, you're right.
I don't know. Maybe it's a stretch. Wouldn't be the first time I've done something like that. But it always fascinated me. Like, there were guys I met at the Rucker who would, this is way aside, we'll get back to the subject at hand in a second, who would say about Walt Frazier, like, he's no good. He couldn't play up here. And I was like, I think he's pretty good, actually. Any case, so Sharon, Elise said something about the notion of a program doesn't flourish, I'm paraphrasing, overnight. Well, you've seen that.
Well, I think
You've
it's
been part of that.
important as you look through this history of ice skating in New York, and really history of ice skating, it hasn't been a very inclusive sport. Right. It hasn't been a very diverse sport. And figure skating in Harlem is really the first and still the only not-for-profit organization that specifically reaches out to girls of color to give them access to the sport. So we want to offer them as much as we possibly can, and that has grown incrementally through the years. Florence was one of our earlier students. Now we have 3 synchronized skating teams. The girls hunger for even more skating than we can offer them. So the opportunity to be next to this gentleman with 9 or 10 ice surfaces coming is great, because this sport should be available to anyone who has that desire to participate and feels that joy of the glide that I first mentioned.
So can you compare the sales pitch for you in the first year or two and the sales pitch now? I mean, do you even have to make a sales pitch to encourage young women to come into the program? Or when they see you coming, they're like, we know, we got it, we know all about the program, we're getting in?
Well, the truth of the matter is that this was a grassroots effort born of the people of East Harlem, and they deserve first credit for their desire to want to participate in this sport. I happen to stumble into them and happen to know how to teach. But I would say there's no salesmanship, it's inspiration. When you provide access and girls can empower themselves through learning discipline and responsibility, they go on way past the borders of an ice rink. They go on to college, they go on to take risks and enter professions they might not have ever thought before. Because who would have thought, as Florence said, she would be an ice skater? And so I think that that really there is a unique spot for us in this tapestry of figure skating. And we really use it as a vehicle for our young girls to become everything they can be.
Yeah, that's sports at its best, without being cliched. That's sports at its best when the lessons extend beyond the field of play. Stephan, we saw the video. First of all, was there, I'm not looking for you to reveal state secrets, but in the process along the way, is there ever any moment with the people who are the core unit of trying to create this thing of like, 9? Really? 9? It's like, was there ever any discussion like, I don't know, maybe we should top out at like 4 or something like that? Or was 9 pretty clear right from the get-go?
No, actually, there was a lot of discussion around that. I mean, the data, I didn't have a moment ago to, rinks, year-round ice rinks in ice markets like, North Jersey and Long Island, Boston, you see 1 rink for every 100,000 people in population for indoor year-round ice rinks. New York City is 1 to 1.8 million. So the access issue is not only an access issue, but it's a proximity issue. So yeah, you can go over to Jersey or drive out, but that's a challenge for most people in New York. So when we looked at this data and started to think about, how many sheets of ice you could put anywhere, where do you find these sites, and what should it be? I was one of the ones that initially saying, yeah, the data is very clear, we should go with 5. And actually, it's my partner, John Nolan, in the back there. He said, you know what? And you hear it in Mark's comments, because Mark was there at that day too. And he said, we should put a second deck in here and make it 10. And I bet that's the world's biggest ice facility. Nobody knew at the time, but we agreed it was bigger than any of us had seen. And Mark Messier had seen a lot of them. So from that day forward, we looked at the business and the gearing and the case around it. Could this actually work with 9 sheets of ice? And without revealing state secrets, it very much will be a successful 9-rink facility. And it really gets at, the secret is access and proximity. Sure. Right now in New York, you have people, Miye, my son, and Kevin's kids, and everybody that wants to be in this sport leaving the city to go find ice, those that can.
Right.
And so Sharon has lack of ice time problems, and every other hockey program that we're aware of in all of New York City has said the same thing to us. They're like, if you open, we want to double the amount of ice that we use in the city. So they're not going to leave the rinks they're at. They're just going to buy a heck of a lot more ice time other places. So
and man, being close to the 4 train, that is key.
Spectacular. We think it's a great location. The Bronx embraced us. We think there's going to be a huge surge in reaching non-traditional skating markets.
Right.
It's the cornerstone of Mark's foundations. It's kids, job, community. It's opportunity, and it's getting everybody and anyone that can and want to onto skates, and those that don't onto the curling.
And which rink will you have the 58 and up league going? I ask for selfish reasons.
We think every rink around lunchtime for those that might be early retirees, and every 7 or 8 o'clock on. So it won't be the 2 in the morning games that I think even you probably participate in. It'll be more
once upon a time.
You know, we'll pull you back to 11 or midnight. But yeah, every sheet of ice will have that opportunity for everyone. And we actually think, you know, the new mall walking is going to be ice skating up at the Armory. So everybody that's you know, wants to stretch their glutes out can come up and skate around to some music.
Good.
I think salsa's going to be big.
Sharon, you were going to jump in there.
I just want to say, we always have had a wait list. So this idea of additional ice time in New York City is really critical. And we'd be happy with 1 extra year-round ice rink. 10 is even better. But it's not for lack of interest on the youth. I think, in fact, in the world of technology, with so many kids walking around with phones, there's nothing better than them to get on the ice and be in the moment and to use their bodies and to, you know, let their minds float for a bit. I think it's a healthy opportunity for young girls and for us, young girls and young boys. And finally, I just want to emphasize that kids of color have been locked out. That opportunity to participate until, you know, through our organization, but hopefully through more access to ice time, everyone deserves the opportunity. When we watch the Olympics, you may see the Olympics in a few weeks, you might see 1 or 2 persons of color competing. You know, one day I hope through your rink that tapestry, that palette changes because we have opportunity.
You talk about the business of, the practices are at 6:30 in the morning or ice time at 12:30, and we have to drive here. I'm reminded, I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, not too far upstate, about an hour and a half north of New York City, and there just weren't rinks. There was ponds, but there just weren't rinks. And so I can recall it like it was yesterday. At 5th grade, I played Pop Warner football, which was, you know, right in town, 2 minutes away. But I loved to skate, and I loved playing hockey. And so I decided the next year I was going to play hockey, which involved being driven 35 minutes to Rockland County, a place called Lotor, which was kind of an inside rink, but outside. I have no idea how that worked. But the key point here is that Pop Warner was 5 minutes away, and Lotor at 6 in the morning or 11:30 at night was like 40 minutes away. So I went in to ask my father, then and now my hero, wonderful man, wonderful father, who loved sports and loved the fact that we could play sports and he could give that to us, the ability to, you know, to opportunity to go out and play sports, and big basketball, baseball, football fan. Hockey, I had to kind of teach him about, but that was okay. And I'll never forget, I said, I made my case. I was in 6th grade. I thought I presented my case, you know. He was a lawyer, so I tried to do it in like a lawyerly fashion. This is why I think I should play hockey this year, and you know, I love the sport, and here's why I should play. And with the idea that, again, Pop Warner was 5 minutes away and Lotor was 35 minutes away, he looked at me and said, "Why don't you play an American sport?" Now, when people hear that now, they go, "Ugh." He, of course, was kidding. It was his form of sense of humor. And of course, I ended up playing hockey that year. And they drove me. And the extent, it's remarkable as a parent now, the lengths to which skating parents and hockey parents go to, our kid wants to play hockey, we've got to drive to Connecticut 4 times a week. And it happens. Yes.
Yeah, can I pop in? I was gonna say also, yeah, I think ease of access is like a huge thing. Like, so I'm born and raised in Harlem, and that's in part why I found out about the program. But you know, there's like for every 5 blocks, there's like 5 basketball courts, and like I mean, you see the correlation between like the amount of people playing a sport. Like my brother would just get up and walk 2 blocks and play basketball and just play around, and he ended up getting really into basketball. Or he would walk. A couple more blocks and he could play football, and now he plays football at a boarding school in New Hampshire. And it's like I had to drive, my parents had to drive, or like we had to go up to all the way on Riverbank, or Riverside rather, to do that for me and my sister. Or I remember mornings where we have to carpool to go to Metz-Willits Point all the way in Queens, and it was just like, if it was right there, you know, who's to say how much better I could have gotten, or like how many more people I could have, you know, say to my friends like, hey, you want to come skate with me? It's I think it makes a big difference, and I think that God bless people like you who have like the resources to create, places like that. I think you're going to see a huge spike in skating, and not only skating, but curling and hockey and whatever other ice-related sport.
Is there any notion of, since it was difficult to do, not in the doing of it, although that's a whole other issue, but in getting the ice time and getting there, that there was a greater seriousness of purpose about it because you didn't have a rink every other block?
I would say yes, for sure, because I knew that the time that I did have to be on the ice was so much more important. I knew the sacrifices that my parents made to drive me, or to pick me up from Riverbank, to get me home, do my homework. I knew there was a lot more on the line versus just getting up. And I think that even if, I think that back then I didn't realize it, but even if I did, and if I knew what was going on, I would have just exerted that amount of energy regardless, because I was passionate about it. But yeah, for sure, a sense of purpose, and also just I would get on the ice and I would go so hard. I don't know, they're literally, my friends used to make fun of me. My head used to steam. I don't know if that happened to anyone else, but my head literally used to steam, and I would just fall and fall and fall. But I knew I couldn't play because I didn't know the next time I'd be, well, I knew the next time I'd be back on the ice, but I would have to wait to Thursday or Sunday. And now it's a lot more. There's a lot more ice time. But when I was growing up, it was 2 days a week, and I would just be yearning to get back on the ice.
So you were skating fast enough, so fast that your head
I don't know what was going on. I don't honestly. When I leave, I will Google that. But my head would literally steam. I used to put my head.
I aspire to skate fast enough.
Has that happened to anyone else in this room? That's insane. You? Okay, good. I don't feel it's crazy.
Miye, when you were at Harvard, any notion about being a hockey player from New York City? Did that come up once or twice or 1,000 times?
Yes. I had a lot of teammates from Minnesota, and they insisted that it was a cool place to be, and I knew that New York was cooler. So there were many conversations about whether it was better to have lakes surrounding you or subways surrounding you.
That's a discussion easily won. I mean, New York City is cooler,
so.
Period, end of sentence. In all these years at Wollman Rink, you talk about various programs that you've had. Do you think you have a handle on when people come to you with a program idea or any kind of idea, all right, that's how this will work, that's how this will work? Were any of the programs for the years you thought, really? You're gonna do that? And it turns out to work just perfectly.
Again, I think it's putting in the time. I think I've had wonderful support by management. I think at a lot of rinks, again, it's sort of very in a box as to what a skating director will offer and what kind of program will be at the rink. And it's just learn to skate, and then everything goes to hockey or private lessons, instead of really creating sort of a school atmosphere and a place for everyone in a program, from young kids up to adults to all levels of skating in the middle. As an example, I remember the first year I was there, we have a little show at the end of the season, and I think the highest level skater we had was an ISI beta, which is someone who's learning back crossovers. And I remember looking out on ice and saying, this is a really boring show. I've got to step it up. So it took some time and many years, but it's just sort of sticking with believing that you can develop something and growing that. I think that, again, this academy, this figure skating academy program that we have, it started with 2 kids and 1 adult, and the coaches volunteered their time, and we taught the 2 kids who were different levels with the 1 adult, and we stuck through it. And now it's grown into 2 separate programs, the adult and the kids program, and they have 5 days a week of classes together and ice time, and from that, other programs then have grown, like the jumping jacks, and so I think it's just it's really sort of having the patience to stick it out, and if something doesn't quite work, tweaking it a little bit, but giving it the time to grow.
We have time for a couple of questions from the audience, if you'd like. We actually have a microphone too, which is good, so that we can hear your question. If anybody has a question, please raise your hand, and we will come to you. Let's go right down here in this row here.
Hi. Thanks so much for this really great conversation about especially accessibility and opportunity. I myself am a hockey player. And my question, sort of a question, sort of comment, but especially in regards to hockey, we're talking about, like building this great new facility and increasing access. Why hasn't this happened sooner? And I ask that because we're in the city that's the home of the National Hockey League. We're the home of one of the most successful, at least monetarily, franchises, in the NHL. And I just feel like we just, in New York City, just sort of ceded the fact that the future talent and the fan base is just going to be in the suburbs. And I feel that way whenever I go to Madison Square Garden. Whenever I see a kid riding on the Zamboni, or I see, the midgets kind of playing at intermission, it's usually suburban teams. And so my feeling is kind of what the role of these big institutions in hockey should be in New York City to really grow our sport and tap into this huge pool of talent that we potentially have that's untapped in New York City.
Take it away.
I'll take a first shot at that. I know you've been looking for some land for rink development for years, but rinks are quite large in New York City in the grid system, and land, when you start to get to the sizes of, say, a 2-rink facility, typically 60,000 square feet horizontally. Once you get to that, you're competing against developers that are putting up office buildings, residential high-rises, warehouses, what have you. And to compete price-wise against somebody like that and still make the sport accessible is really a challenge. And I think that's what historically you've seen over all these years, that the rinks that do exist are only in the most undesirable places. Riverbank's great. Upper West Side at the time wasn't. It's on top of a wastewater treatment plant, right? You got Chelsea Piers, which at the time was the meatpacking district, which is not what it is today. It was quite nefarious. And you have Aviator way out, just almost off the edge of the earth, out into the ocean there. An hour to get there if you're driving, bad traffic day too. They're in the most difficult, challenging places to get at when they were findable. And in those cases, those are all public-private partnerships. The state was involved with Riverbank. Aviator is a federal facility. And Chelsea had, that's a state facility, land and pier also. So, finding the place for these rinks often requires a very sticky relationship, a challenging relationship in creating a consortium between the local government, usually a state government, and then a private actor. So very few have been successful in getting those off the ground. So, the two that are really successful right now, privately, Chelsea Piers and Aviator, you can see how hard it is to do in the city. It really comes down to, competing against the Dursts of the world. Once that piece of land is available, every time I go down the FDR by the UN, I see that big, clear piece of land. Wouldn't it be great to dig down a little bit, put some rinks there, and then let them build a building on top of it? And that's the challenge. That's what we run into. I don't know who else has run into similar problems, but I think you have too.
Well, we had the demand and we didn't have the ice, so we actually looked into what it would take to build a rink, and for us, an academic center, because it's all one package when you talk to figure skating in Harlem. And then we did hear about this wonderful venture and thought, well, I'm sure they could do it a lot better than us, and we're not really in the rink building business. However, we did want to increase our impact. We knew we had a model, a program that really worked. So don't get upset, but we're actually in Detroit now. So we have figure skating in Detroit as a way to expand the reach of figure skating into non-traditional communities.
There's nothing to be upset about. The notion of, no, seriously, the notion of bringing opportunity to skate to anyone who has not had the opportunity. How could you argue against that?
Well, to a group of New Yorkers, we really wanted to expand here.
Yes, other questions? Yes, right over here. Well, hold on, wait for the microphone, please. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, you go ahead first, and then we'll...
No, and I actually don't have a question. I just have a bad experience with microphones.
That's okay.
I'm loud. You can hear me. I actually want to shameless plug. I'm actually director of leadership with figure skating in Harlem. And I will tell you that I came about that, and I'm going to make my daughter blush because she just came in from one of our academic programs, and she's been with the program. This is her 9th season. And I'll never forget her started at 7 years old and figure skating. And I'm from Harlem, and this is something that we never knew existed. And we couldn't pull away from it. And the first ice show that we went to, if I'm not mistaken, I fell in love with flow as a skater, and I thought, wow, we have these girls of color on ice, and there was an Olympic year, and I thought, as I'm watching Olympics on TV, here we have girls of color doing some of the same thing that these women are doing on TV, and what an opportunity for them. So here we are, all these years later, and I'm so passionate about the opportunity that Sharon has helped bring to our community. And then I had experience with Brad.
Yep.
See, I'm not out there. I only know that because a few years ago, my son was a participant in ice hockey in Harlem. So once again, we didn't know that these opportunities existed, and I'm from Harlem. So looking back over the years of how it's grown, so to speak to what you were saying, I think the demand now is really out there where these sports are becoming more and more popular with women, with people of color, and to have an opportunity where the possibility of a rink like that existed, I think would be amazing. Now, if you want to try and get some land on 125th Street.
We like that too.
Excellent, excellent. Yes.
Well, I think I'm just echoing what everyone said. I grew up in Detroit, where, of course, you couldn't go outside without tripping over an ice skating rink. And then I came to New York from Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has 8% of the population of New York, and it has about the same amount of ice. Wow. And when I came to New York, I was astounded at how little ice there is. Uh-huh. And it's endlessly been frustrating because the question is clearly accessibility and affordability. And my question is, I understand completely, because I'm in real estate, that real estate in New York is expensive. But on the other hand, in the 20 years I've been in New York, there's been a big expansion of the parks. We have the Brooklyn Bridge Park, we have the West Side, the Hudson River parks. The city's put a lot of money into parks in Brooklyn and in the Bronx and in Staten Island, and yet I have not seen a single ice skating rink built in a city park. It took 4 years to renovate the ice skating rink in Prospect Park, but to my knowledge, that's the only new ice skating rink in a city park, and I want to ask why that is so.
It's an excellent question. I'm not sure, I don't have a definitive answer. I would imagine it would have helped had we a mayor, and this is not a knock at any particular mayor, but had we had a mayor who was a skating enthusiast, that might have, that might have helped.
If I could,
But is there?
I mean,
you
I
people have been
don't know
involved
the
in
answer
this.
to this, but it seems to me it's a bit of a catch-22 because the lack of accessibility makes this a very limited audience, and yet, and as a result, to developers perhaps it seems, a park anybody can use, but not that many people are ice hockey players or figure skaters. And of course, the reason why not that many people are ice hockey players or figure skaters is because of the lack of rinks.
Right, to keep on.
Yeah, so perhaps
Gotcha.
that's something.
I think there's something else interesting going on, because I would say that the ice sports, maybe hockey aside, but in figure skating in the last 20 years probably hasn't been thriving, probably hasn't gotten more popular. In fact, it's gotten less popular. But I would ask the question, why has figure skating in Harlem continued to gain in popularity with people wanting to participate? And I think some of that is really outreach. And so we have now this waiting list, this group of children who are enthusiastic about the sport because there was an active introduction to it, an active outreach to them. And they're being blocked because with limited ice time, they can only see themselves go so far. And that's why, again, we just love this man.
It's interesting.
Popular guy here tonight.
We've been running a proto program, actually, with inline skates. So Mark has actually funded a foundation that has been paying for it. We call it Inline to Ice. And he's been working in a couple of Bronx schools up by the Armory, where the kids get to actually, in a gym, skate around in inline skates. So to the point of having to do outreach, it's very much there. You have to do it because a lot of these kids don't even know it's an option to go skate. So even if you drop the rink, you'd still have to go door to door for quite some time and say, hey, there's this rink across the street. Why don't you come participate? So we're trying to get out, that outreach part. Mark specifically, and get them to go out and then talk to their friends about, hey, you know what I did today? I did this thing called inline, and it's going to allow me to figure skate or play hockey in the future.
That's great.
So that's an active program that we've been running a year and a half now. Very few people know about it. It's very sort of small, but it's going.
Okay, a couple of time for other questions. All the way in the back. Yes, please.
Okay, my name is Jeff. I'd like to build on something that Sharon had said, two themes, access and diversity, and that's been consistent with what everyone has been pretty much saying. Access, we speak about the various programs, but growing up as a kid, access was to the public sessions, and my plea to you, Steve, and others, is that there be more public sessions. There's nothing like when I went to Flushing a few weeks ago to see the whole ice filled with kids on a Saturday afternoon. And being Flushing, it's changed from the community it was before when it was all working class Irish kids to now it's kids mostly of Asian ethnicity, and another time at Flushing when the girls from figure skating in Harlem were up there. It was just a beautiful sight to see. And that, in my mind, all emanates from the public sessions. The other aspect is diversity. I participate in the sport speed skating. Speed skating has historically been an everyman sport. Early on, and among the Winter Olympics, the one that has contributed the most medals of any other sport, 67 to be exact, 30 of which are gold. And the first gold medal from the Winter Olympics is in the Smithsonian from a New Yorker, albeit upstate. Early on, a young first-generation immigrant, Irving Jaffe, in the 1928 and 1932 Olympics, finished high school, was cleaning up rinks, and skated, and because of the public access and things like the Daily News Silver Skates, had a chance to skate and compete. Later on, working class kids from Queens and Yonkers and the Bronx all had a chance to participate. So I'm making a plea also for speed skating, which is an everyman sport. And to that extent, I know 9 rinks is extremely economically sound, but within the United States, there are only 2 indoor Olympic ovals. Norway has 2 ovals. An Olympic oval in New York would make us unique. It may not be economically viable, so the point.
Well, is that part of? I don't mean to
so
cut you
just
off.
finally, access and diversity and speed skating.
Is an oval part of the plan?
Not right now. We actually did look at it. Inline skating, again, is where most of the speed skating talent is coming from nowadays. Yeah. If you look at the past gold medalists in that sport from the U.S., they're coming from Philadelphia, North Carolina. They're coming from everywhere. Who's the one that just recently there's a speed skater, African American woman that is now going to be on the Olympic team, and she's from an inline background. Mm-hmm. Only started skating 6 months ago. Wow. So we are going to have a very active speed skating program. We spoke to Apollo Ono. And he's going to be working with us on that. As it relates to public skating, I hear you. My son loves to just forget hockey. I just want to go out and play and have fun. Right. We're going to have one sheet dedicated to public skating for the entire time the facility is open. So you're not going to have to worry about schedule. You're going to just say, I want to skate, grab your skates and go. Because right now you have to, I call like 6, 7 rinks. I'm like, when's the open time? Yeah, so we're going to have one dedicated rink. You can go up anytime you want, and it'll be, get your ticket and go right on. That's the programming we have right now.
We have time for one more question, I'm sorry to say. So we're going to go right up here. If you wait for a microphone for 1 second, please. Thank you.
This is a very quick question. When do you expect it to be open?
All goes well. 3 years from August, so 21, hopefully. So we'll capture the excitement of the next Olympics.
Such a quick question, we have time for one more. So that's good. No. In the news business, we love people like you. It's quick. Here you go. Let's go right. Well, let's get 2 quickies right back there. If you could keep them rather quick, please. There's a microphone. You got it. Well, we're taping it, so if you could use the mic, that would be great. Thank you.
I've been in human services in that area, and I live in that area for the last 40 years. The kids in that community could barely, get a coat for the winter.
Right.
How are they going to be able to afford this? And are you going to do anything about it, Stephen, to help the community along, to integrate them with this? And are there going to be any opportunities, any employment opportunities while this is going on? And what are they going to be?
It's a great question, and yes, yes, and yes to everything you asked. We have what is considered one of the richest and best community benefits agreements that have ever been entered into in the United States. If I recall it correctly, 50% of all permanent jobs will go to the local community. And there is a foundation that's in the community benefits agreement, but there'll be additional foundations with our partners like Mark. But in our community benefit agreement, we're giving $1 million of in-kind ice time per year to those communities that you're talking about. And we are also entering into partnerships with equipment manufacturers that will be providing the equipment for those children to use to be able to participate in the sport. So essentially from their perspective, it's no cost. The only thing we're asking of them is sweat equity. So to be in those programs, to get access to this free amenity for them, is that they have to go to school, bring a report card, and show us that they are actually attending school. And that's the way Mark wants it, and that's the way Mark's going to get it. And Sarah Hughes is actually, I neglected to mention her, is also a partner of ours in this, and we'll have a similar type foundation. And that's the only requirement, is these children show up and show us they're attending school.
Last quick, yes.
Hi. Just a question, just a little comment on diversity. I'm Asian American. Half of the U.S. figure skating team is Asian American, and there's 3 speed skaters who are Asian. So my daughter's a skater, and she's very proud to see that. I know there's other groups that are not as inclusive, but I'm a person of color too, and we're doing pretty well in figure skating. The question I have is more global and more national. First is that for the people in figure skating, there hasn't been a real competitive streak for women's skating, which really drives figure skating membership for a long time on a global scale. So why do you think that is? And on the national side, a lot of the figure skaters are really West Coast based and also to a lesser extent Midwest based. And people like Tara Lipinski and Nancy Kerrigan and Sarah Hughes, you don't see a lot of East Coast high-level elite skaters. So I was just wondering why you think on both the global scale and on East Coast scale, there's a lack of competitive figure skating.
Don't look at me. Anyone want to jump in on that?
Well, I think
it's an excellent question.
I think we should all acknowledge we have an Olympian in the room tonight. Jojo Starbuck, would you please stand? I'm sure she could answer that question much better than I, not in the world of competitive skating. Again, we use skating as a vehicle to help our girls go to college and beyond, but I would imagine that in my experience, skating blossoms where the great coaches are, and there becomes a community of competitive skaters that push each other. And so the polls move. Sometimes it's Illinois, sometimes it's California, sometimes it's Delaware. But why we're not the best in the world? Got to work hard. We're getting outskated by a lot of young women, in particular in the Asian countries. So until that changes, we're not going to see a champion, I think.
But while it's nice, it's obviously nice, especially when the Olympics come around, to see American skaters doing well. And so the notion of the overall story, certainly on this night, being that more kids are getting a chance to skate. And if one day one of them made it to the podium, or just to be in the building, that would be great. But the notion of just something that you said right from the get-go about, use the word confidence, that's it right there to me. The notion of giving someone, regardless of what the sport is, and we're talking about sports tonight, it could be another venue or vehicle, it could be music, it could be art, it could be literature, giving kids a chance to do something and then revel in it, and then having them, the side effects, that's the wrong term, having the ramifications be in a positive way of like greater confidence. that's the work right there, and to me, that's the joy of it right there.
That being said, Skating Club of New York does have 7 skaters competing in the Olympics this year, so best of luck to them.
All right, real quick as we finish up here, the title, no more pictures, sorry. The title for tonight has been What's Next for Ice Skating in New York? You got about 20 seconds each. What's next for ice skating at Wollman? Anything coming up that's out of the blue or somewhat different, or?
Come try frozen yoga. You won't be sorry. It's really, if you can skate forward and glide, and you can skate backward and glide on 2 feet, you could take this class. And we designed it specifically to appeal to your basic public session skater up through a more advanced skater. So give us a call and come try frozen yoga. Do something a little different.
I have a tough enough time doing downward dog without skates on. So, Sharon.
I'm going to get specific too. This Saturday, $15, come to Lasker Rink. We take it over. It's called Soul on Ice. Everybody's welcome. It's a giant public session for 2 hours. It's supposed to be a lot of sunshine. March 24th, 25th, we have an ice show called Black Ice, and it's about the exploration of black movement through time on the ice. It'll be a knockout. I invite you to come see our girls. And in the bigger picture, we're going to keep on growing, and turning to the gentleman to my right for the last time. Hopefully we get more ice time to see our girls go even further.
Website for people, information?
Figure skating in Harlem.org.
Okay. Stephen, what's the next? I mean, obviously it's a long process. Is there something coming up that we might be hearing about? Again, without giving it away, that is the next thing that's going to happen.
Like, this isn't the second half subway. We'll be open for all of us here to use it very soon. So for me, it's ice, and more ice, and just creating a center of excellence here in New York City for 8 million people, and then some to use and become, very happy skaters.
Miye, what's up? When's your next game? And what's up? What's up? We didn't even get to the district attorney's office. I mean, that's a whole other discussion.
Our next home game is in later in February. I think it's the 25th or something. My mom can correct me on that. But go on the website, come to a game. We play out in Newark. It's a lot of fun. Bring your kids. It's a very special experience, I think, to see women's hockey for the first time.
Where do you play in Newark?
I would play it's right next to the Prudential Center. So if you take the path, it's right in the heart of Newark.
Okay. And Florence, what's up for you?
I second Ms. Sharon. And I guess more accessibility, so more people can fall in love with skating, or people can have the opportunity to see what we're so crazy about.
Well, they say about hockey, the coolest sport. Well, the coolest sport in the world. But again, that notion of being on skates as kids, now as adults, the feeling is really indescribable. And we thank all of you for being here tonight to be part of this. And thank you.